Welcome to One UN, One Voice with Ahmed Salim. In Timor-Leste, only 27% of preschool children attend schools. Nearly 37% of rural youth aged 15 to 24 are illiterate, compared to 6% in urban areas. A staggering 70% of grade 1 students do not meet basic learning goals. While Timor-Leste has made commendable progress since gaining independence in 2002, significant challenges still remain. These include aging educational facilities, high rates of grade repetition, linguistic diversity, and underdeveloped rural infrastructure. These issues are further exacerbated by the fact that nearly 42% of the population lives in poverty. Join us today as we delve into early childhood development and lifelong learning in Timor-Leste. Together, we will explore the progress made, the obstacles faced, and the ongoing efforts to ensure a brighter future for the nation's youth. Let me introduce my guests today on the panel. We are very lucky to have Mr. Rui Hanjam, Principal Advisor to the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Culture. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you, sir. And then we have Ms. Adelina Lourdes, Project Coordinator, UNESCO Timor-Leste. Welcome to the show, Ms. Adelina. And then last but not least, we have our very dear Ms. Amina Mohammed Didi. She is Chief of Education at UNICEF Timor-Leste. Welcome to the show, Ms. Amina.
Thank you, Ahmed. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. So, Mr. Hanjam, we come back to you for the first question, which is around, how Ministry of Higher Education is doing. We heard that, with 19 institutions under its wing and massive student count of 65,000, the Ministry of Higher Education certainly has its hands full. Can you share some of the major hurdles faced by these institutions, and what is the game plan to tackle them?
Thank you very much. On behalf of the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Culture, I would like to extend appreciation particularly to Mr. Ahmed, particularly to join this One UN, One Voice talk show. It is really important from our side in order to be able to share some of the challenges and progress that actually we face in the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Culture. I have to say that since 2018, this ministry actually used to be one of the Director General in the Ministry of Higher Education, Youth and Sport.
Right.
And then simply the decision to take out this
and to make it a separate
ministry. That's because we see the growing number of higher education institutions, and now we have around 5 universities and 14 institutes. For this, the ministry should play its important role in order to oversight and in order to control monitoring the progress and the quality of this ministry. So I think we have institutions that look after this particular, in terms of the challenges that are faced by the, in the higher education, this
right.
19th higher education institution, National Agency for Academic Assessment and Accreditation, and then I think that's the main role. And then the other one is national, it's research and technology. That's science, research and technology. But this is something that related to the quality, then I can elaborate. In terms of the challenges or hurdles that you mentioned, I think one is the diversification of training offer, okay? It seems that the evaluation that we went through, I mean, this institution went through because it has a program institutional, assessment.
Right.
and accreditation, and also programmatic accreditation.
Right.
So look at the diversification of training through the programmatic assessment. I think we have some institutions that they have a kind of repetition of course.
Right.
And if they have a, what they call a repetition of the courses that offer, and then the quality is low, the human resources, particularly the lectures that actually assign in order to continue with the classes, that I think to some extent will also affect the quality of the graduates, okay? And that's something that we are actually concerned, particularly, that's part of our concern, particularly when those graduates, when they finish, they wanted to continue with their jobs, because labor market will not absorb, of course, the labor market will absorb those that consider to be qualified, right? That's the first one. And the second one, I think we're talking about the training qualification, the lectures, okay? And in a different higher education institutions, I think we identified that there are some gaps in terms of the lectures that actually provide the course in a different areas, right? That is something that the ministry really eager to pay attention in order to improve in the future. Because we identified that, for example, the doctoral program, a doctoral, I mean the PhD in an institution, only 2%. I'm talking about the entire, the 19th higher education institution. And then for the master, I think I have this number is around 56%. And then diploma, of course, that's the rest of them. This is also a challenge for us, because how can we provide a course that they really qualified? Because nowadays we are talking about the mobilization across the regional. For example, we are going to be ASEAN members in the future, and then CPLP, and then that's an issue.
Yeah, these are huge challenges actually, and these are the things I think we need to take care in the coming days.
That's true.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think also the enhancing the capacity of researcher, because when you become a lecturer, then you need to focus on the research quality, and then should be internationally acknowledged or regionally acknowledged, because the lecturer at the universities, they cannot just simply, they prepare lessons and then they provide a class, I mean, they teach, but they have to also do their own research. And then this is part of the improvement of the quality. And then another one is they scale up the skill of students, particularly normally the higher education institution, when they accept the graduates from the secondary school, mainly in majority, they are in a low, what do you call it, capacity in order to enter.
Right.
So that's why the ministry, I think, last time also discussed about, we call it Anu Zero. It's just the English term, I think it's matriculation or something like
right.
that. So that's in order to prepare. And then other issues concerning the quality, I mean infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Yes,
that
because
is very important.
some, what they call, institutes or universities, and we are talking about the library, and we are talking about the, what they call it, laboratorium, and it's very, the condition is actually lag behind. I think all these things that are considered to be constrained. I think some of the, what do you call it, this issue, it's already identified, but now this government is going to establish, what do we call it, a commissions, national commissions, in order to carry out an assessment, to have a kind of what is stock taken or assessed what is sort of the needs of the higher education institution. Even
Excellent.
previously, some of these efforts have been taken by previous government, 8th constitutional government, but now there are some continuation, I think.
Excellent, excellent. Mohanjam, thank you so much. I mean, you know, you have covered all these things very nicely. You mentioned about research, you mentioned about quality of education, you mentioned about quality of teachers. And most importantly, you mentioned about strengthening the skills of the students and how they will fit into the society, how they will fit into the system. You mentioned about infrastructure also, very, very important. I mean, that was also one of the talks or the points in my intro also. National Commission, I think that's an amazing initiative to assess and to look into the needs and then prepare a plan. I will get back to you on this, that what is Ministry of Higher Education's thinking on that, you know, how they are going to address these issues which you have outlined, and how this National Commission will help, because it's 5 years long government. We have to look into, I think we'll have to act fast in terms of, you know, doing that need assessment, putting the planning in order, and then, you know, rolling it out. So I will get back to you on this. Thank you so much for your thoughts and reflections. Ms. Amina, we come to you now for one of the very important issues we mentioned in our intro. And thanks for your contributions to this program, both UNESCO, UNICEF, and other UN agencies in the preparation and in the research. So my question is about the preschool enrollment figures I mentioned in the intro. The latest data reveals a silver lining for Timor-Leste, with preschool enrollment figures climbing to 27.87% in 2020. Yet we still lag behind on global scale. And first I would say, if you could just enlighten us, what is the global scale we are looking at? And in comparison to that, can you share what are UN's plans to amplify these numbers in the coming days?
Sure. Thank you, Ahmed, for the question. And thank you for inviting UNICEF to be a part of this One UN, One Voice
It couldn't have without
program.
UNICEF. Couldn't have without UNESCO.
Let me begin actually by saying that UNICEF has been a steadfast partner in the education sector for nearly 2 decades. One of our strongest areas of focus is actually preschool and early childhood education.
Right.
And if you will allow me to highlight why preschool education is so important. It lays the foundation for children's education beyond preschool at all other levels of education. There are several studies in other countries that show that children who have completed a program of early childhood or preschool education actually perform better in subsequent levels of education. They are more likely to progress successfully into other levels of education. They are less likely to drop out of school early, and they are less likely to repeat. And I think one of the points that you highlighted was also the issue of repetition rates in early grades.
Very true.
And that also links to the fact that not all children in Timor-Leste have access to preschool education. As you also noted, there is good progress. The gross enrollment rate currently is about 27%, and that's good progress. So what is UNICEF doing to support this? Since 2015, we've been supporting a program on preschool education in 2 municipalities, Armera and Bikeke, where we use a community-based approach for preschool education. Now, why is a community-based approach important? Because it involves the local leaders, it involves parents of that community. We first begin by talking to them, as I mentioned to you just now, why is preschool education so important? You know, so then we get their buy-in. We do community triggering and mobilization of the community, if you like. and we talk to them about the importance of early childhood. And then when we have their buy-in, we get the community together to find a place that's available where we can run the preschool. And in many cases, it could be a public building. So just to give you some background, we have about 101 community preschools in these two municipalities, in Armera and Vikeke, where we have nearly 3,000 children every year studying and attending community-based preschools.
Wow.
And that's quite a huge number. If you look at the data, this contributes to about 4% of preschool enrollment. I mean, the children in community preschools that are supported by UNICEF contribute to about 4% of the preschool enrollment. So we use a community-based approach. We establish a school management committee that usually comprises the Shefe Suko or the Shefe Aldea, and parents and the facilitator of the community preschool. We don't call them teachers, we call them facilitators, because they're facilitating children's learning. And then we establish a school management committee that helps in the daily running of these community preschools. Now the volunteers, the facilitators of these community preschools are actually volunteers from the community, but we train them. We train them every year on things like the national curriculum for preschool education. We orient them on the national curriculum. We train them in play-based approaches to preschool education, because we use a play-based approach in early childhood. We also train them on things like classroom management. How do you structure your day? You know, so in these community preschools, you have learning corners. It could be a math corner, it could be a language corner, it could be play corner, etc. So we have multiple corners in the community preschools where children move from one corner to the other, and the activities that are conducted help children to develop their competencies in multiple areas. And that links me to come to a point that I want to also highlight, that preschool education helps children to be ready for primary school. It helps their readiness to transition from the early years into a more formal kind of structure in primary education. So UNICEF has been supporting the government in establishing these community preschools and enhancing access to preschool education. We are also working with other partners to formalize the, if you like, these community preschools, because at the moment they are not registered in the education management information system. But early this year, there was a preschool system decree law that was approved by the Council of Ministers, and we are now trying to work within the premises of the law to see how community preschools can have, for instance, access to public resources to ensure their sustainability, and also to see how they can become part of the network of preschools in the country.
Thank you so much, Meena-ji. I have two follow-up questions. Very interesting. You mentioned about, you have pinned it actually, how preschool, that preschool bracket is important for the life of the child and the life of the entire community, the household, and the nation at the end of the day. Two follow-up questions, that how this community-based preschooling is linked to the government's preschool priorities, number one. And number two, you mentioned about, that you are doing it in Armera and Vikeke. Are there any plans to expand it to other municipalities?
Sure, thank you, Ahmed, for those questions. Now, I think I kind of indicated earlier how it links to the government's plans. I think because community preschools are much less costly, if you like, to establish, right. Because as I mentioned earlier, we sometimes use a public building. You know, it could be the chef elder's office that is used for 3 days a week to right. run the community preschool, which means that we don't construct a new building, you know. So it's a cost-effective...
Very creative, actually.
It's a cost-effective way of doing it. We also run it in some in homes. So that's called the home-based.
And preschool. Those are volunteers who provide their homes?
These are volunteers who right. make the space available within their homes. And I've visited a couple in Armera and Bikeke. And, you know, it could be just a very simple setting. But because it is, for instance, in one of the schools that I visited recently, it's in this beautiful open space, lots of trees, there's the river running by, there's grass, and the children are learning in that environment. Sometimes I think people have the perception that in order to learn, children have to be inside the four walls of a classroom. But especially for early years, learning happens in the way that you provide that the conducive environment, you know. So the kind of environment that you have in some of these settings, like in somebody's home, and it could be a very simple home, but the children are happy, the facilitators are trained to engage with them, and we provide some materials. So, but coming back to your question, the way this links to the government's plan is that the current government, actually the 9th constitutional government, has a target of 60% access to preschool education by 2028. But as you noted at the beginning, the access to preschool is only 27%. But that doesn't include the community preschools because it's not yet registered within the education management information system. But if we use this approach, and even with the enrollment that we have in community preschools in these two municipalities, that contributes to about 4% extra, 4 additional percentage points of access. So the point I'm trying to make is that this approach, an alternative approach...
Or the model.
Or the model, exactly.
So it's scalable. It's scalable. Doable.
Yes.
And you have provided the evidence in those two municipalities. And, you know, that leads to my second question that, you know, are there any plans to expand, you know, this model, this approach to other municipalities?
Sure, that's a good question too, because I think for the government to reach that 60% target over the next 5 years, we as the UN need to support the government in exploring alternative approaches, such as the community-based approach to preschool education, which is a much more cost-effective way of running preschools. So yes, we do have plans, and as I mentioned earlier, the preschool system decree law was approved earlier this year, and we are trying to see how this community-based approach can be made more sustainable in that these schools can also access, for instance, school grants or school feeding programs, so that it becomes more sustainable, and the children in these remote areas, where I forgot to mention that, Ahmed, that the community preschools actually reach some of the most vulnerable children in some of the remotest areas in these two communities, where there is no access to public preschools within walking distance of many of these SUCOs or LDS. Yeah.
Thank you, Aminaji. Very, very insightful and very, very interesting, I would say, facts. I will get back to you on this. I have few more follow-up questions, but let me loop in our colleague, Ms. Adelina from UNESCO. Thank you once again for joining us. I have an interesting question for you. I mean, we were talking about the quality of education. We were talking about, you know, how these children and the youths, when they come out, when they move on to the next scales of their lives, I mean, how they will fit into, you know, in the respective, I would say, places. Science and mathematics, very important, I would say, one of the most important faculties. These are considered, as they say, the backbones of tomorrow. Science, mathematics, I mean, you know, all science faculties. How is the UN pitching to boost our teachers and young brains in these powerhouse subjects? UNESCO is supporting the government on these areas. Our viewers, and we would like to hear from you, Ms. Adelina, on this.
Yeah, thank you, Maun Ahmad, for the question. And also, thank you for having UNESCO to join in this One UN and One Voice show. The United Nations, through various agencies and initiatives, has recognized the critical importance of science and math in education and also in national development, and has undertaken numerous efforts to enhance teachers' capacity and student learning in these fields. In particularly for UNESCO, which has been actively promoting science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM education globally. UNESCO supports teacher training programs and the development of STEM curricula to improve the quality of education in these fields. And these supports ranging from teacher trainings to support and promote the development of teacher training programs focused on STEM subjects, and also innovative pedagogical approaches and advocacy and policy support.
Can you please go back STEM? You said STEM for our viewers and for people like me who are very ignorant on these areas. What would be STEM?
STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Wow, amazing.
Can I add something to
Please, please, Amina.
So many countries, instead of calling it STEM, they call it STEAM.
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 Right.
So they add the art to it. So science, technology, art.
Okay.
Yeah, engineering, art, and maths. So STEAM. So just to add that, but I'll also add later once when Adelina finishes her inputs. I'll also and after she responds to your question, I'll also add some work that we've been doing on STEAM.
On STEAM.
Later.
STEAM and STEM. And this is the beauty of UN, I would say, and the development sector as a whole.
Yeah.
We come up with very many different beautiful terminologies, but of course they're all beautiful. So science, technology, engineering,
arts and mathematics.
Arts and mathematics. I think for this program's sake, I think we can agree that we can call it STEAM.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Because okay, so back to you, Ms. Adelina.
On STEAM, and what we have UNESCO support so far since 2014 up to 2018, we have provided, capacity building to teachers, and also development and distribution of teachers' guidebooks, supplementary materials for math and science, especially for cycle 3 of the education system in the country. And also we continue with that activity in 2018, from 2019 to 2022, again with the provision of capacity building to teachers, and we contributed 90,800 supplementary books for students.
How many say again?
90,800.
90,000 books, okay.
Yes, to enhance.
So we printed those books?
We printed those books and we distributed to all schools in whole territory of the country. And also for cycle 1 and cycle 2 of the education system here in Timor-Leste, we supported with the strengthening of basic math and science for strengthening the capacity of teachers, and also enhance the learning of the students through distribution of supplementary materials for students, and that one starting from 2019 to 2022, and so far we have already 623 trainers that have already attended the training on basic math and science.
Right.
And also around 1,644 teachers for basic math and science that have already trained. And we also provided supplementary materials for cycle 1 and 2, and also rehabilitate 9 laboratories in 9 schools in 9 municipalities, in Kovalima, in Ainaro, Vikeke, Paukau, Manatutu, and other municipalities.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ms. Adelina. May I request, Amina ji, you wanted to add something to STEM or STEAM?
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to mention that UNICEF partnered with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT DLab.
MIT.
And we developed 10 STEAM courses, 9 of which were developed in partnership with MIT DLab, and one other course which we developed with the support of, in collaboration with INSPA University of Brazil. And the course that was developed with support from INSPA University Brazil is a financial literacy course for young people. And the other 9 STEAM courses, they are like courses like how do you do a vertical garden?
Right.
You know, food prepreservation. How do you make
vocational skill development also, and then, you know, how
something like that,
right.
Yes. And how do you make reusable sanitary pads? You know, some of these courses are very interesting for young people, and we've offered them at what's called the community learning centers that are run by the Ministry of Education for out-of-school children.
Right.
So we did a pilot last year, and it's interesting that these courses were co-created involving young people from Timor-Leste with expertise from MIT and also INSPA University. And the courses were co-created, which means there's a lot of ownership over the courses by young people in Timor-Leste. So we've piloted this, and we are now, we have plans to scale it up.
Amazing, amazing. And how many people, this is amazing, I would say, most of the times or sometimes, I think, I mean, you know, we don't have a lot of information about what is happening, how we are supporting the government, how we are supporting the communities, and what kind of impact all this assistance and support is making to their lives. I mean, I'm sure there are many, many enrollments already on these courses. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But thank you so much for your additional, you know, information on that. Mahanjam, I come back to you. Mana mentioned about teachers training, and you had already mentioned about teachers training in one of your, you know, in your previous reflections. So they say, I mean, there has been an impressive surge in, as we have seen, there is an impressive surge in enrollment. In enrollment rates, but on the vocational and higher education side. But having said that, I mean, people are still concerned about the quality of education, and you rightly also mentioned, which is very hard to ignore. So how your ministry is making sure that what is being taught in those 5 universities and 14 institutions you mentioned is top-notch, and it's in sync with what today's job market and society really need. So how it aligns with the requirements of the society, of the people who are studying, the youth who are studying, once they get out of the universities, what are the opportunities for them? 2 questions. One, the quality of teaching there in those institutions, and then how it's connected to the applicability.
Yes. Thank you. I think when we are talking about higher education institutions, this is something that can be said as a long investment, that sometimes we need a certain time in order to evaluate, for example, the graduate from any institution will be absorbed in the labor market.
Right.
So what the government is doing is that first improve the quality among these institutions, both public and also the private. Okay, we have two publics, of course.
Right.
And then the rest are actually private. The government is secure the system of higher education with the standard of quality. We call it National System of Qualification. This is essentially to
National
have
System
of Qualification.
Qualifications.
To have an integrated national system of qualification that draws the lessons learned from outside.
Right.
Internationally, regionally, for example, CPLP,
right.
Portuguese-speaking countries, and also ASEAN.
And ASEAN, Timor-Leste is already, has the observer status, and then, you can draw experiences and information and knowledge from ASEAN also.
That's true, because they also send their team to make evaluation to our system, right?
Right.
So we work together with them to improve gradually certain, what they call it, effort that we have to, I think, carried out in order to make certain improvement in accordance with the standards and procedure that they establish.
Very true.
That is one. And then strengthen the capacity of the two institutions that I mentioned before. They consider to be an autonomous agency, but they play important role in order to guarantee the quality of education, because we welcome also experts from outside jointly with our expert in order to oversight our, what they call it, institution, higher education institution.
And these experts, they come from different countries, or they come by invitation, or they come by...
Invitation to join ANA, because ANA always carried out the assessment, right?
Right.
Programmatic assessment, and also another institutional assessment. For those that not fulfill that, then, for example, there are 3 institutions that actually they only get the operation license from the ministry, but they haven't entered in the assessment by this National Agency for Academic Assessment and Accreditation.
Right.
I think that's and another one. I think that also continue to provide a scholarship for lectures from different universities, not only public but private. That's something that continued even from the previous government and now ongoing. And the previous government also, they provided credit for the private, what they call higher education institution.
Right.
Because they have to improve their quality of library, the infrastructure basically. And also they can use the credit to send their lecture outside in certain universities that are accredited outside, so that when they come back, they are well prepared. And also strengthen the diversification of courses. I think that's something that we need to agree with the different institutions, that if this institution open, they already have the course in management, and then maybe the other with the low quality, we should advise them to focus on the one that actually they have human resources available. Otherwise, they're going to duplicate. So this is, I think, something that
very
really important. Another one, this government is already integrated. The 9 constitutional government also integrated this continuation of construction of polytechnics.
Okay.
The polytechnics, the tourism in Los Palos, academic and fishery and marine biology will be in Manatutu, and agriculture, I think now.
How many of these?
4.
4.
And engineering will be in Swai. This is already, since I also involved in the process of integrating this into the 9 constitutional government. At the same time, also, we include this one into the process, because there was a long time planning, particularly integrated into the National Strategy Development Plan. So whenever we prepare all these, I think this process, we always base on the National Strategy Development Plan.
Okay.
And also the Education Congress, the 3rd Education Congress that gather all the stakeholders together in order to pledge, in order to come up with, I think, 37 or 38 recommendations. And then we also, based on the program of each government, particularly this is 9 constitutional government, and of course the organic law of the ministry, and also other support document, what they call it, SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. That will be the key in order to prepare something that's more comprehensive. But let's see how this evolves, and I think we need to produce our human resources that with a good quality. And for example, in the future, we are talking about the mobility of researchers, workers, labor, in what they call it, perhaps, for example, those that going outside for Korea or Australia, not only those that are unskilled, but supposedly those that are skilled. Skilled workers. Skilled workers. True. And that is, I think, something that this ministry is planning now, especially with the establishment of this national commission, and gather different representatives from different line ministries that actually they have their also what they call it, their plan integrated into the human resources capacity building. I think sooner or later this commission will work efficiently in order to carry out their assessment to identify those needs.
Thank you, Mao. Thank you, Mao Hanjam. Very nicely you have rounded up, you know, that what kind of steps government is taking and what is in the plan. Thank you so much for your reflections. I will get back to you on the other bit, like, you know, teachers' capacity building.
Yes.
In later on in our next round of questions. Yeah. But let me move on to Ms. Amina Mohammed. Thank you so much, Amina ji, for your earlier reflections. So ECD versus ECE. You know, we are very fond of, as I mentioned earlier, we are very fond of these acronyms. The development sector is a very happy lover of all these acronyms. So ECD versus ECE. For those of us who love clarity, can you demystify the buzz around early childhood development and why it's getting in the limelight?
All right, thank you. A very important question, I think. As you say, we use very often these acronyms, ECE, ECD, and some countries even call it ECCE. So actually, early childhood development is the period that spans from -9 months, but from the time of conception until about the first couple of years of primary education. Why is this period so important? Because brain development happens at the most rapid pace during these first years. So the neural connections that are made in the brain happen at the most rapid pace in the first few years of a child's life.
Right.
And that's why this period, which we call early childhood period, or the programs which we call early childhood development, are so crucial. You may have read in the media recently that His Excellency the Vice Prime Minister announced the establishment of an early childhood development steering committee under the Vice Prime Minister's, His Excellency Vice Prime Minister's office. And so you can imagine what significance the government is also paying to this program. And UNICEF is actually supporting the government, has been supporting over the last couple of years, to draft a national early childhood development policy. And the steering committee will support the finalization and endorsement of this policy. It is a multi-sectoral issue because, as you know, if it's from conception, it also involves the period when the mother is pregnant with the child. And so the nutritional needs of the mother, the safety, the health of the mother are also important, because that's important for the developing fetus.
Very, very true.
And then from the time the child is born, the child's health, the nutrition of the young child, the infant, and from the time the child moves from those early years into early childhood education. ECE.
Wow, amazing, ECE.
Okay, ECE. So that refers to early childhood education. And that can also happen even before a child goes to school, because it is the kind of stimulation to the mind that you provide at home to the child. You know, how you play with the child, how a parent or a caregiver sings to the child. That can stimulate the mind and help develop these neural connections that I was referring to earlier. So early childhood education is a part of early childhood development. I hope that clarifies.
No, that very nicely clarifies.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much for enlightening us here in the room at the studios, and also to our viewers, that this is what is the, because sometimes we are so bogged down by the acronyms and all these abbreviations. But thanks a lot for for the explanation and for the references you have given. I will move on to our next question. The next question is around, actually, which Mao Rui Hanjum had already alluded to, which is the quality of education. And in the quality of education, and it is, when we say quality of education, it's multifaceted, I would say. It's a multifaceted term, and when you unpack it, it's about the quality of human resources, the quality of education itself, and the quality of teachers. So next question, we will talk about the quality of teachers. Maybe this question goes to three of you, because you also deal with teachers. You definitely deal with teachers, and you also are supporting our sister UN agencies, UNESCO, UNICEF, are supporting the government on improving the quality of teachers. So maybe I can ask you first, Mao, because you had already, so what are the plans in terms of improving the quality of teachers? You very nicely mentioned in the previous question, and you laid out the plan, basically how to improve the quality of learning. Now the quality of teachers.
Well, as I mentioned before, I think in terms of the percentage of the teachers at the doctoral level in the higher education, only 2%. Master level, 56%.
56%.
There's, to some extent, if you compare it to other countries, it's very low. So that's why there is a need to do a kind of massive capacity building courses. I mean, whether to send those teachers or lecturers outside, particularly target the best universities outside, we have to invest. That is the function of the Human Development Capital Fund. So I think the government, this is depending on this current assessment, because this commission already approved in the Council of Ministers.
Right.
So in terms of the numbers, the representatives, but we still, the Ministry of Higher Education, because we are the chairman of this commission, so we still need to focus on the task of this commission in order to identify what exactly they need, and the strategy can be prepared in order to also to reinforce the enhancement of the capacity building of those lecturers at the different universities.
Different universities.
Yes, we not only the public university, but also the private universities or institutions. I think that is, of course, this is in the plan. Even previously, we tackled through a process of giving the incentive to different private universities in order to make their own plan to send their, what do you call it, lectures outside. But unfortunately, some misuse that what they call funds for other purposes. which is, I think, something that now this government will change the strategy in order to be able to capacitate our own resource, particularly target the higher education institutions.
Higher education institutions. Yes. In terms of primary education institutions and the capacity building of teacher, I'll come back to you, but let me club this question and add one observation from my side. Anjum, you mentioned about the National Commission and the assessment which will be going on and the Human Capital Fund. Sometimes what happens is that, this is my personal opinion. I mean, from the sustainability point of view, sometimes public sector, governments, I mean, for instance, government in my country or other countries I have seen. So an initiative is started and then maybe within 5 years' time, I mean, we are unable to, complete that initiative. But this is a lifelong commitment. Where is the element of sustainability? Do you think that element of sustainability will be inbuilt into the strategy you're talking about? For instance, in 5 years' time, I'm sure they will be clear planning what we will be able to achieve in 5 years' time, and then how it will continue even after 5 years.
I think it's, if we're talking about this sustainability issue, if the change of the government every 5 years, if they continue to focus on the national strategy development plan, I think
that shouldn't be a problem.
There shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
But the problem is that when they change
then
the
what is the
government,
problem?
and then there is a tendency of the government to come up with other priorities.
Sometimes I agree with you. Focused. Very true. Maybe
so, in terms of the capacity building, human resources, this is supposed to have a consensus, national consensus, that we all have to agree. We all have to focus on this program of capacity building. We don't have to look at the political background, political affiliation or whatever, but we have to focus because Timor-Leste is very small. I had a discussion with one of the representatives, in Singapore.
Right.
UN representative also. He mentioned about, given the experience of Singapore, that they have a kind of long commitment on investment, particularly for the education, basic education and higher education. The budget always between 25 to 30% from
the entire budget.
So we went to Busan, our minister, and then also we went to Senegal.
Right.
And we also part of the Global Partnership for Education. And then we signed the document that we are going to commit for the investment for the education, supposed to be 15% above from the state budget. But I look at the investment since 2007. Well, I was a vice minister at that time, but 2007, 2008,
right,
until 2019, the investment for education, social sector,
right,
that's, I think, not reached 1 billion. Only 900 something million. So not reach 1 billion.
1 billion over the years.
Oh, over, say,
the cumulative investment, I would say, from 2009
yes.
to, you said 2000?
Until 2019, roughly 10 years.
10 years.
Yes, I've seen the data. I think from the, when they prepare the, document for the COVID, I think.
So perhaps for
yes.
I'm sure, Mao, you have already, these facts, figures, data, I'm sure you have already shared with the relevant government channels, and I'm sure it will be taken care of. So moving on to, sorry, I hope I haven't disrupted. You had completed your. So I wanted to move on to Mana Edlina on the same topic. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to highlight that it's a very important point that Mauroi has raised.
Very true.
Because the international, what Mauroi is speaking about is the international benchmark. The recommendation
and this, exactly.
Is that 15 to 20% of the state budget should be on education. But in Timor-Leste, it is, over the last maybe 3 years, it's been about 6 to 7%.
6 to 7%.
This year, it's even less.
And Mao Rui also alluded to the fact that we had committed at Busan conference that no, we will commit more than 15%.
Yes, and this was also one of the commitments made in the national statement to the Transforming Education Summit, that Timor-Leste will attempt to progressively increase the proportion of state budget to education.
But then
not only that, because I, at the time, under the Minister of Benedito Freitas, who is now the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation, and I went and represent on his behalf to represent the ASEAN Pacific constituents that share around 16 countries in Washington at the time. And we discussed about this, and we even committed to that. But what happened is the change of the government. No one cares about this.
So, no, as you rightly mentioned, but you know, if we put ourselves in the government shoes, as you rightly mentioned, and I'm very happy that you mentioned, sometimes what happens is from this side of the table, we are looking at things in a different way, with a different angle, with different glasses. But on the other side of the table, there are sometimes other priorities, you know, which government has to deal with. So, but I think our job is to raise the awareness, our job is to talk about these issues, and our job is to bring this information to the public fora, and then provide that information to the right government channels. So thank you so much. I would move on to Mana Adelina and then to you for the last comments on the same quality of education, and then we will close the program because I think we have run out of time. It was such an interesting discussion. I had few more questions, but maybe for another session later on. So Mana Adelina, over to you. How UN is supporting, like, you know, Mao said, this is the plan on improving the quality of teachers. So how UN is supporting from the higher education side to the government on that plan?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting question and also issue on teachers' quality here in Timor-Leste. As you know, that teachers who are well trained, are supported and valued are essential to ensuring quality education for all, and also meeting the education targets of the 2030 agenda. And so for UNESCO side, we work with countries by helping them to strengthen their capacities, to assess teaching needs, and also develop strong evidence-based policies in relation to teacher recruitment, deployment, management, and professional development.
Right.
UNESCO also support member states by providing policy advice and technical assistance, including the development of tools and guidelines and opportunities for knowledge exchange and policy learning. In 2021, UNESCO Jakarta, we published a manual for teachers entitled From Teacher Policy to Quality Teachers, which was developed based on the recommendations from Policy Review Report on Teachers' Policy and Plan, published by UNESCO in 2020. So the Teachers' Manual presents content and strategies to better equip teachers and school administrators to work in schools that are in desperate need of revising the nature of teaching, content, and pupils, as well as comprehending and realizing the country's educational objectives. In 2022, also, UNESCO Jakarta published a study entitled Sub-Regional Policy Review on Teachers, Teaching, and the Teaching Profession to accelerate achieving SDG 4 in Southeast Asian countries.
Including Timor-Leste.
Including Timor-Leste, which are Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Timor-Leste.
Timor-Leste.
Yeah. So the study underscored the role of teachers, teaching, and the teaching profession as an integrated system that supports quality education, is envisioned by UNESCO. So that's identifying 8 major themes,
right,
which includes teacher standard competencies, teacher professional development,
very true,
teacher support, teaching quality, formative and summative assessment, framework on teaching, showcasing and rewarding best teaching practices, teacher professionalism, and teacher career development. And in addition to, so the review shows that all the 5 countries that I have just mentioned, they have the necessary policies in place and have implemented them to various degrees. Yeah, and in addition to all the initiatives that I've just mentioned, UNESCO, member states, and international partners conduct regular meetings every 2 years. It's an International Teacher Policy Dialogue Forum hosted by the International Task Force on Teacher for Education 2030 to review progress made and to exchange good practices in teacher capacity development. So I think.
Thank you, Mana Adelina. And then we move on to Ms. Amina ji for your last words. That how this was the side of the higher education, and we'll be very happy if you could, you know, briefly, since we're running out of time, and if you could briefly, you know, enlighten us from the primary education side.
Sure, thank you. And I think the quality of teachers is such an important issue because they contribute to so much to children's learning in schools. And as Mana Adelina said, UNESCO is doing a lot of the work around policies and standards and for teacher competencies, etc., and supporting the government in these areas regionally as well as in Timor. We train the teachers on how you can engage with them to help build up their competencies once they've joined primary school. We also work on inclusive education, where we train teachers on, one, how to identify children who have various disabilities, and after you've identified children who have different disabilities, how do you support them? So we train teachers on that. We also train teachers on violence prevention in schools, because this is also a big issue. And all of these things, the mental health and well-being of children also contributes to their learning, as you know. So we also work with InfoDepe, which is the ministry's ongoing professional development unit, the in-service teacher training, if you like. And we work with them to train teachers on violence prevention in schools as well. But these are just a few of the
things. I think we need more programs.
Yeah, because
we need more programs.
We haven't even touched on ICT in education, and we have a big program on that. So hopefully
I think we can do an exclusive one. Topic-wise, maybe. I mean, you know, it would be lovely. I mean, you know, I was so engrossed into this discussion, I didn't realize. I mean, our colleagues are saying time is over. But thank you so much, Mana Amina. Thank you for joining us. Sir, thank you very much, Mauhanjam, for joining us. Mana Adelina, thank you so much for sharing your reflections and thoughts for this program. And last but not least, let me say thank you to our viewers. Thank you so much, viewers, for joining us for this program today. And please stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.